or webinar on version 9 reports. Okay, everybody should be able to hear me. I had a couple people raise their hands before I had the right button, so hopefully everybody can hear me now. So all right, let me drop into questions here. Okay, so so I'm starting to see that people can hear me now, right? So Rhonda, can you hear me now? If you just want to drop into the chat and let me know for sure, so that we'll get underway here. All right. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Yep, Rhonda can hear me. Yay. Okay, so as I said, this is the webinar for version 9 reports. If that's what you're interested in, that you come to the right place. So hopefully I've got, I have some names in my list that I recognize. So some of you are already running version 9. There's a handful of you that are not running version 9 and maybe just interested in gathering information about what reports are available, how you use them in version 9. This webinar is really designed to be give you a good round knowledge of what comes with RetailPro, what we at Big Hairy Dog have added on top of that, what you can be trained on changing, okay, and where you might need other tools to do so. So what we try to do is just give you a good basis for learning what's in RetailPro 9 reports and how to navigate your way around and potentially change things. Okay, so this is roughly our agenda. It's very simple, and so as I said before, I'm going to try to hit the basics. If you have some specific questions, you can try using the question or the raise your hand icon, and I'll try to address them. And we'll also probably have some time at the end where if we get through most of it and people have some specific questions, we'll answer them. And if you leave this webinar with unanswered questions, then you can always email in. We talk to a tech or trainer here about any of the further questions. So we hope that this webinar clears some things up, but inevitably it might create some further questions which we want to make sure that you get addressed. All right, so I'm going to minimize my agenda. All right, and so what you're looking at here is the report viewer, right? And I accessed that for those of you who are unfamiliar with version 9 reports at all. There is an icon on your desktop. In version 9, the reports are a separate executable. So in version 8, you launch it from inside RetailPro. In version 9, you launch it from outside RetailPro. Okay, the reports themselves do not use a RetailPro seat, if any of you are familiar with that. So you can have RetailPro 9 reports running on a computer where you do not necessarily have RetailPro 9 itself installed. That's one that's a little bit of a different thing. Okay, but you launch it the same way you do RetailPro 9. You launch it, you get the RetailPro login, right? And then after you log in, this is the start menu. Okay, so the first thing that we talk about in this webinar is your first initial setup, right, is in the options and workstation preferences setting. There's a couple of things where out of the box we change the defaults, okay, and generally there's just a couple of small things once you set them up, unless you change your default printer or something like that, you're not going to be in here again. Okay, so I'm going to start with the things that you'll probably never change once you set them up. Okay, so under the General tab in Appearance, okay, this field here where it says Display Report Filter. Okay, so out of the box, this says None. Okay, which means that if you filter for a certain date, or you filter for a DCS, or you fill out any of the other filters in the report, you wouldn't see that in the header of the report. And it's pretty important for most people's daily lives that we put the report, the filter criteria in on either in the header on the first page or on the last page. We always encourage people to put it on the first page. If you came from version 8, that's where it was and you didn't have a choice. Okay, and it's usually, you know, that everybody sees the first page, right? So that information is readily available. So display report filter on the first page, okay, under the general setup. Okay, so if I go back to the general tab and to setup right here, okay, there isn't anything that you need to change out of the box. Okay, the only other thing that we would have you change would be under printing preferences. Right, so if I click on printing preferences and then printing, okay, here, as I said, default printer, right, so you would pick from the Windows printers that are set up on your system, okay, and from that point forward, it would print on that. Now, for those of you who have reports running on multiple workstations, this presents a little bit of a problem because depending on how your reports are set up, you might have a different default printer on each of your workstations. Okay, and so, you know, if you're having trouble with that, you can, you know, get with tech or training here. But essentially, what happens is that the report client, right? If you're running it on a workstation, if you are running over a network share, if you know what that means, then it's going to have the same default printer for all of your reports clients, no matter what. If you're running locally, then you can have a separate printer. So if you're having difficulty dealing with that, let us know and we'll help you with the rules and straighten it out. Essentially, you can set the printer name to be any kind of 80-column type printer, LaserJet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can even use the virtual printers like a fax or the OneNote or something like that. If all you're ever going to do is preview these things and PDF them and you're never going to print them, you can get away with some of those other printers as well. Okay, so setting the default printer, the default paper size, if the printer needs to turn it landscape or if the printer needs to print legal, that can be embedded in the report, so you don't need to worry about setting different instances for that. Okay, and the other thing that you want to make sure is out of the box, the print range is unchecked. Why, I don't know, but we always go when we set up a new reports instance, right, and check print range so that you can select, I just want to print page 1, or I just want to print the last page, etc. Right, and the other icon or the other check boxes here, right, if you have more than one printer that you might optionally want to send a report to, or if you want to request more than one copy at time of printing, that's what those two boxes are about. Pretty standard as far as Windows applications go. All right, so like I said, this is initial setup. Generally, you wouldn't change anything in here once you get initially set up, except for maybe if your default printer changed. All right, so this is your reports menu, right? All the action is here under the reports icon, right? So if I click the reports icon, I get a menu of my reports over on the side. I've got, you know, buttons, right? This is a menu designer type situation. So if any of you are familiar with the menu designer, you right click on the menu here on the side or the top, you get into menu designer. So you can add and subtract buttons if you need to. Okay, some people do a strippy version of this. They take some of the stuff off, like delete report and things like that, if they want to be able to give this to you know, lower level employees or people where they don't want them accidentally clicking on stuff. and you can restrict permissions and that kind of thing, and we'll look at that as we go through. So what you're looking at right here is, basically the defaults with a couple of additions up at the top that we'll talk about later on in the webinar. All right, so on the left is the menu, okay, and this is divided up into sections. So the sections that come with RPro are the audit, the journals, the list, merchandise, and summary. Okay, so the other two are things that we have added aftermarket, and we'll talk about that. First, what we want to talk about is why there are separate sections in there. So RPro comes with, 100 and something odd reports, and most of these reports are basic things that were our outgrowths of their extensive history in version 7, 8, even going back to 6. So there are reports that provided with those systems, and in most cases, they're pretty much the equivalent. There are a few exceptions. So for the webinar purposes, right? We generally don't talk too much about this first section, audit reports. This is not accounting audit reports. These are audit reports that have to do with system function. Okay, and there's some built-in capabilities in RPro to log every time, for instance, somebody does a permission override, right? Or log every time somebody logs in, right, etc. And these reports are designed to report out that information. Pretty boring, and most of this would be like security control, type of thing. So we don't generally talk too much about those reports in this kind of thing, because they're way down deep in people's experience with RPro, and what they're interested in, for the most part, is what am I selling? What do I have on hand? Those kind of merchandise-oriented things. But there are a few things that exist in 9 that we didn't even have in 8 that are more security-oriented or more system-oriented, and that area is one of them. Okay, so I'm going to skip over custom because, like I said, this is an area that we have added aftermarket. We're going to go to the journal section. The journal section are generally lists of transactions. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit so that you can see, hopefully you can see, that these are lists of documents, right? So list of purchase orders, lists of vouchers for receiving, lists of sales for different type purposes, lists of SOs, okay, lists of transfers. So all of these are documents, okay, and different kinds of ways to filter those type of documents and report things for varying purposes. So journal, list of documents. Okay, if I'm going to skip over, well, I might as well do list. List, incredibly boring, no analysis whatsoever. Basically, these are just lists of records in the system, right? So a list of customers with their addresses. Okay, so I'm just going to run one of these really quick. Okay, and I don't have that many customers, so it's not going to take that long. And I don't have any addresses either. List of customers, and with this list, you can look at your output, right? You can print your output. So this print icon right here, okay, defaults to that laser printer that we looked at in the setup, right? Defaults to paper size. We don't need to change the orientation; it already knows. And then we can print all the pages or a page date range, right? So your options are you can print it, okay? You can export it, okay, in the following formats, right? So if you have an Excel on your computer, you can export anything that you can run in V9 reports to Excel with the formatting, or Excel stripping the formatting out, okay? So this is a differentiation from previous versions of RPro where all we had was text only. But if you wanted to pull this in with all the formatting in it, you could. Okay, most people are interested in just the data, so they'd probably do text only. So you can export this into Word. One of the most popular options here is exporting this into PDF. Okay, so you can PDF it and email it to somebody, or PDF it and keep it on a disk drive, anything like that. So all of those things are possible with every report. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of this so we didn't get on there. So a couple of other things that that exist up here that are used infrequently. Refresh the data. So if you're sitting in a sales report and you know it's close to polling and you just want to go grab new data, you can hit the refresh button, right? And it'll go out and it'll grab new data. In this case, nothing has changed. It's kind of a no-brainer. Okay. And then you can save this report as an RPT, basically, and an RPT means I can open it up with Crystal. Not used too much, okay, but it does exist. All right, and then you have some of these other things up here where you can page through, right? So I've got first page, next page, previous, last, and the zoomer button, right? So this is one place where if you're familiar in version 9, using the pressing the plus key to zoom things up, this is one place where that does not work. Okay, so instead you have a zoomer button, okay, where you can use that. You can do, you know, something in between the steps that are listed in the zoom, but that's the way to zoom things. Okay, no plus minus type of thing. Okay, so that's a little bit about what you can do with a report. Okay, the other thing that's really handy is this finder here, where if I click on this, I can put in a string and it'll find it in the report. Not so helpful in this kind of report, but when we get to item sales reports, kind of handy. Okay, so find, save as, refresh we talked about, close, the ever popular close, and you're out of the report. Okay, so lists are, and you know, I always tell people these are, you know, exceedingly boring because in most cases you could get the same thing that you get here by exporting something from a list view in RetailPro. Okay, so and I apologize, I didn't get logged into RetailPro here, so I'll just let this load in the background and I'll come back and talk about that specific capability. Because a lot of times when people are learning reports, they don't realize how much they can just export out of RetailPro in a native format. So we always just try to open their, okay. I guess I didn't check that. My license has expired. That's fun. Okay, so I might not be able to show you that today. But if you're interested in that capability, I think if you look at some of the other version 9 webinars, it shows that capability. I also think we have some short videos that talk about exporting out from RetailPro into Excel. All right, somebody's got a question. Hang on, I'll try to answer it. Thanks, Teresa. Okay, so there is a question in here about what the Save As button is, and that button can save the report, and most of the time it's saved as a crystal format. Okay, so let me show you that again here. So if I run this report again with the same parameters, and I get the Save As button, okay, so this gets you Save As, right? And here's the formats that you can use. Not very exciting, right? So if I save this report in Crystal in the RPT format, I can open it with Crystal, right? So if I could save it with data, like if I had an on-hand report for the end of the month, okay, and I saved it as an RPT file, I can open it back up with Crystal, okay, and print it if I wanted to. Most of the time, if you're saving a report, you would export it to PDF and save it that way. It's much more portable, like portable document, right? Format, that's what PDF means. Okay, so hopefully that's answered that question. All right, so let me get out of this and get out of this and get out of this. So list views, list of departments, list of employees, all of that kind of stuff is exportable out of RetailPro native. Okay, and so most people, once they've got a mature system, unless they're looking at some of these things up here that have to do with gift card lists, you know, they're not in here into the list file at all. So, and while we're here, right, any of you, if any of you are using RetailPro Central gift cards or Central gift certificates, that means RetailPro is tracking your gift certificate numbers, and you can inquire on the balance inside RetailPro. You're not using an outside service. Same for gift cards, that has that capability. This is the only way you can get a list of what gift cards are active if you wanted to see the whole thing, right? So it reads the central database, prints, and gives you a list. Okay, so those have a useful, you know, important usage if you're using the Central's gift card and Central's gift certificate. Most of you, if you're using gift cards, are going to be using an outside service like Cayenne or ValueTech or somebody like that to maintain your balance, and you have to inquire from them to get a report. And that's not what these are. This is the RetailPro internal Central's gift card and gift certificate lists. Okay, so moving on from lists. Summaries is the next section that comes with RetailPro. Okay, and it's an extensive section. You can see there's a lot of reports in here. Okay, and so this is really the first place where you really get into analyzing what's going on in the business. And summaries, what's important to know about summaries is there's one data element in summaries. So we're reporting either on hand, or we're reporting sales down here under the sales associate, blah, 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 or we're reporting adjustments, or just the check-in and out records, okay, or we've got transfers down here, and it's not document by document necessarily, but a summary for a time frame, and one element per report. So in the summary section, you will not find a report that can show you sales and on hand on the same report. Okay, you will see lots of different ways to look at sales, right? Because that's why we're all here. If we don't make sales, we don't get paid. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to look at sales, lots of different ways to break them up. Okay, lots of ways to look at how things were sold by associate. There's some newer commission reports. If any of you guys use commissions, the RetailPro commissions, some of these are relatively new. Associate commission summary and summary by item. Okay, so you know, they're later versions. If you're on later 9.4 version of RetailPro or 9.3 version of RetailPro, you should have these reports if you hadn't had them before. So anyway, all of these, and so what we usually do here is pick something that everybody can relate to, an item summary, right? So if I click on item summary here, right, these are all the fields that can be used as filters. It's not important for you to know anything about those if you're going to run the report, because typically if you're going to run the report, you click the run button, right, and it presents you this filter box, right, and you can scroll down through here and fill out the filters the way you want to fill them out, okay, for this run of the report. Okay, so if I say year to date here on sales, okay, I'm not going to fill out any of the rest of this stuff because I don't have that much data in here. All right, so this is a typical of a RetailPro sales report. They like their graphs, so they put graphs at the top on most of the sales reports in particular. Some people really like them, some people don't, but nevertheless, you've got sometimes a graph in the header or bar chart or something like that. Here's the filter criteria I was talking about. So this section right here where it says created short date 1/1/2017 through 11/2/2017, right? That's year to date. I filled in year to date. It tells me this report covers year to date. That's the only place on here that I know that. Okay. So you got the body of the report with, you know, the fields, etc. This report happens to be just a description 1, right? We're going to talk about how to change that if you need to. That's usually where we start when we're talking about changing things. But the one out of the box comes this way. It sorts in a particular way that's native to this report, right? You can page through the report by hitting the next button right here. You got a total at the bottom. This is, you know, standard, you know, Retail Pro out of the box report. Okay. If you want to print it, you hit the print button, and you have the choice of printing first page, last page, all of them, just the middle, whatever you want. Okay. When you're done looking at it, basically close. Okay. And if you're going right back into the same report, okay, without changing off to a different one, it will remember the filter criteria that you ran the last time. So this is typical of Retail Pro if you're familiar. It remembers the last filter you did. So here's my year to date. Okay. And so if I execute that again, okay, I just wanted to show you when it loses that automatic part, right? So if I click off this to another report, okay, I don't even have to run the other report. If I click back on to this report and click run, so that filter is gone. Okay, so as long as you're still on the same report, it remembers. Okay, in more current versions of Retail Pro, there is a last run option. Okay, and so this can be handy. Let's see, it's not going to let me do it here. Item summary, last run. So evidently, I don't have the most current version that lets me do that, but I should. All right, so something's a little cattywampus there. So these reports, right, generally speaking, right, you have the default filter that's set up, and then when you go to run, oh, there we go, now I got last run. Okay, so if I went to run here, right, you could see nothing's filled in. So I'm going to cancel that. Now if I hit last run for this report, okay, it's going to run it with the same parameters from the last time I actually executed the report. Now this is something relatively new. So if some of you have been running Retail Pro 9 for a while, aren't aware of this capability, it was something that existed in version 8 reports that they had enough requests for that they put it in 9. Okay, so if you want to try to use it, all you should have to do is add the last run button to your side menu with Menu Designer, like I just did. Right, so this button, you can put it on the side, you can put it on the top, but what it does for that specific report, it fills in the parameters the same way you did it the last time you actually ran the report. Okay, something relatively new. All right, so, so let's take this report. Okay, I'm going to run it again, and I guess I'll just last run it. That'll be fine. Okay, so I've run this report, okay, and I print it, do whatever I'm going to do with it, but I decide that this is one that, you know, I want to run again and again, right, and I might want to have the criteria default to something, okay, so when we start running these reports, we start talking about how to do that, okay, so I'm going to close this report, okay, and show you down here on the lower left, right? I'm on the reports section. So you can see that reports section is pressed in a little bit. I'm looking at the reports list. Let me drag this out a little bit so it's a little easier to see. All right, so I'm looking at the reports list in the summary section, and I'm on reports. So if I'm highlighted on sales item summary and I click filter, okay, now I'm in the default filter for that same report. Okay, and that's a little hard to see, but I am, you know, you can't tell the difference up here in the top unless you get all the way to the top where it says filters. All right, and that's the one I'm on. Okay, and I know that I'm in filters because of this. This is depressed right here over on the left. Okay, and what I'm looking at in the middle box, okay, is the list of things that can go on a filter. Okay, so these are the list of elements, and generally we don't recommend that you mess with, taking these on and off. Okay, but what we do recommend that you do is use this criteria button over here on the left, right? So these are the values that we could potentially assign so that when we click the run button, it defaults to those values. Now you can override them, okay, when at runtime. Okay, it will not affect what the default filters are. All right, so in this particular report, let's say every time I go in here, I want it to default to month to date. Right, so I can go into that filter, I can tell it month to date, okay, I can save it, okay, and so now every time I run this report, it's going to default to month to date, but if I decide for this run, I want year to date, then I say, I change it on the fly. Next time I run it, it's going to go back to month to date. Okay, so there are some things in these reports. There's a lot of fields, and if you don't see a value here that you want to filter by, then you won't be able to add it yourself. Okay, we will talk about that when we talk about the crystal reports a little bit later in this broadcast. Okay, but and you will notice in here these are in alphabetical order by field name. Right, so a few things that we always train people to do is look at these and see if there's anything, if there's anything in here that you want to default to, that you don't want people automatically filling things in, then you fill it in here, and then all you do is hit the run button and off it goes. Okay, this is also a way that you can make a one-button report or an automated report. So if I wanted to set this report up so that it always ran with the month to date, right, I could set this here, right? Okay, and then if I go to reports, okay, and go back to summary, and then pick this off the list, item summary. Okay, so now if I have my default filters set, and if I can hit the run button and I don't have to touch anything in here, I don't have to change anything, okay, then I can set up a job string or a batch file or something like that to automatically run. Oh, look at that. Nothing this month. To run this report on demand. You can make a batch file that somebody can click on off the desktop. You can have an auto batch, and we'll get a little deeper into that. But it is one way to automate reports using, and the key to it is using the default filter. Okay, so the other thing about default filter, when we get to importing and exporting reports, if you are multi-store or multi-location. Okay, see, hang on a second, I got a question here. Go to questions. Dun, 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 dun. That must have been an old question. Okay, need to make a report. Okay, so Tara's asking, can you explain the need to make a copy of a report and how to do that? Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be the next thing up. So a single copy of the report, right? This is Retail Pro's version of this report, and you might want to have different versions of this report. And the only thing that's different about the version, okay, is that that they have different filter values. Okay. So what I have done in the case of this one, let's see if I've got all kinds of stuff in here. Yeah, so let's not use that. That's too confusing. Okay, so if we wanted to take this item summary, for instance, since we're on item summary, and we wanted a version that defaults to month to date and a version that defaults to year to date. Okay, what I would do, okay, is I would say this version, right, that's the item summary, sales item summary, the one that comes out of the box. Okay, for the Retail Pro reports, they're not going to allow me to change the report name. Okay, so when we teach people how to copy reports and do their own, we would say, let's register another report. This report, in the report path here, you see RPT underscore S8 underscore item underscore summary. That's the actual report file. Okay, and you need to know that so that you can point a new instance of that report and create a new filter. Okay, so let me cancel this and we'll start with, okay, so we know the name of the report. It's RPT underscore S8 underscore item underscore sum. Okay, so if I'm going to register another copy so that I can make a default, okay, I'm going to use this register report over on the side. Okay, so I'm going to click on register report. Okay, now I get to name it anything I want, right? So let's say this is going to be my month to date, sales, item, summary. All right, so I'm going to leave it in the summary section. That's your choice. You notice I opened up this other section before and it had a whole bunch of stuff in it. If you're doing this for your own purposes, what we would usually recommend is that you use the other directory to put all your stuff in so it's easier to find. Okay, if you don't, you'll have it in the summary section, but it's going to be buried in this hundreds of reports. Okay, and you'll also see, if you've dealt with us here at the Big Hairy Dog much in reports, that when we name a report, we put a character in the front. Okay, and that makes it sort to the top of the list. So that's another trick that we use. Right, so if you look at summary section, there's nothing that's been added here. But if I go to the custom section, you see all kinds of stuff with exclamation points at the front. Okay, and that's just a little, it's nothing more important than we just want that to sort to the top. Okay, there's no significance about the exclamation. You could use an asterisk. You can use a dash. You can use a period. You can use anything you want. Okay, and it sorts to the top of the list. So when we teach people how to do this, okay, we usually say put a character in front of it so it'll sort to the top of the list, regardless of what section you leave it in. All right. Pardon me. Okay, so the key to this is you got to find that report. Remember the RPT underscore S8, etc. All right, so if I hit the three little dots, that allows me to browse. Okay, and I know that that was in the summary section. All right, so I can open up the summary section and I can find that report on the list. Okay, so that's why it's key to know what report you're looking for. Okay, and my S8 is right here, right? So that's the S8 report that we were running from the summary file. Okay, so we pick that off the list. We open it up. All right, and what's happening now is it's loading the parameter values right in this middle section. Okay, and when you register a new copy of the report, okay, you have to tell the system, this is the tedious part, okay, that you have to work through when you do this. Every place where the type is a lookup, okay, you have to tell the system what data field in the database to pull that from. And you would think, couldn't the system do that itself? We've asked that question a lot, and the answer has always been, nope, you have to do this. So you don't have to do it where, like, there's a date range here, numeric date range, anything like that, right? So if the field is defined, okay, as an and or something like that, you don't have to do it. But if it's defined as a lookup, then you have to tell the system what field to look this up in, right? And so it is a pull down, right? So you don't have to spell out everything. And basically, learning how to do this, is something that takes a little bit of time. The best advice that I can offer you is if you're copying an existing report, take a snapshot picture, right, of the way these things are filled out from the report that you're copying, okay? Because all of these will be filled in on the report you're copying, and then you won't have to guess that this is an invoice status or an invoice type. You know, they've given you a clue on invoice type, but they don't give you a clue on invoice status, at least not in this report. Okay, so I got to find all the employees, and because I do this like day in and day out, I know most of these off the top of my head. It doesn't mean that I'm typing any faster than any of the rest of you, but okay, so I'll whiz through these. Right, store code. Okay, DCS. All right, so as you can see, this is you know, a little time consuming. If you're setting up automated reports, you know, it's really worth it. You get the you know, you can set them up to be automated, and you can whiz through monthly, weekly, daily reports if you want. Okay, and I apologize, this is a little slow here. Let me just get through these. One trick, if you've registered reports before, you know that a lot of them have these UDFs, right? The inventory reports being the major pain with the UDFs. So inventory UDF 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 right? So I just entered in inventory UDF 4, okay, and I've dropped down to where I'm going to enter UDF 5, okay, and so we stumbled over a trick a few years back that made our lives so much easier. Instead of typing inventory UDF 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. If you've just entered inventory and you type an X, and I think a Z works as well, there is no X on the pull down list, so it's going to default to the last thing you entered. Okay, and then I'm going to pick UDF 5, so I just down arrow to pick UDF 5 and press enter. Okay, so if I get over to UDF 6, right, I make sure I'm in here, I type an X, and it says, oh, last thing, I don't have an X, but UDF 5 is the last time, or last thing that I saw. So do you want UDF 5? No, I'm going to down arrow to UDF 6, thanks. Okay, so this is something that you know, can speed up, especially this UDF nonsense here, because you do need to tell the system all of these are lookups, and you need to know what field. If you use UDFs, if you don't use UDFs, you still have to define them, so you might as well define them properly. Okay, so I can whiz through this pretty fast with a few clicks. Okay, and then let's see what else I got down here. All right, so every field that says lookup in the type, okay, has to have something filled in. I think I got them all. It will yell at me if I don't. Right, so you fill in all the field names for all the lookups. You hit the save button. Okay, and there was one I missed, right? So it'll yell at me. So then you got to find it. What did I miss? I missed a bunch of these up here. Okay, so discount ID, discount reasons. Okay, this is active. This is the department code. This is class code. Okay, and then didn't quite get that. Okay, another thing when you're registering reports, and some of you may not know this even if you've been around for a while, okay, is that we can actually rename these parameter labels. So if your inventory UDF 3 is season, for instance, okay, you can come into here, okay, and you can type that, relabel these, so that when you run the report, and you get the list of filters, now it's going to say season instead of UDF 3. Okay. Same thing with things like in this report. Where's the date? So in this report it says created short date, right? And to me, if I didn't know any better, created short date would say the day that I created the item. Well, it's not. actually. This is the sales date range, right? So I can change this so that if I have somebody who's, maybe not as knowledgeable about what all these, oh, come on now. Didn't save it. Hang on one sec here. Say no. So let me edit that again. Right, so let's try that again. Sales date range. You have to click off of it and make sure it knows that you're done before you save it, and I did not do that. Okay, so now we've registered another copy of that report. It's the same report, okay, but I have the capability now of changing the filter, right? So if I click, I'm highlighted on the report I just added, I click the filter, okay? So now I'm on this filter. If I go to criteria, okay, and I see my sales date range, I renamed that. That was short date range. And so if I set this to month to date, okay, that's now the default filter for this report. Okay, and just so we're clear, right? The one that I cloned it from down here is this one, item summary, right? This one is not actually touched, so to prove it, I'm just going to change this to undefined, right? And I'm going to save that. Okay, so the name of this filter is sales item summary. The name of the filter up here, okay, corresponds to the title on the report, okay, not to the RPT name. It's a fine point, but that's how Retail Pro's keeping them straight. All right, so if I go back to reports, okay, and I look at my summary, right, so that's the new one that I made, right, it's still running RPT S8 item summary, okay, the same as this one here, right, this one is still running RPT S8 item summary, okay, but there are two different values, right, in the filters. Okay, so if I run this one, this is the one where I cleared the filter out, so it should be the filter is undefined. You can see that. Okay, if I run this one up here, okay, and click run, this is the one where, and it resorted this because I changed the date range. So I would probably want to try to do something about that so I'm not buried my sales date range down here in the bottom. But you can see I saved my month to date sales date range in here. When I run this, it's going to run month to date. So if I wanted a year to date version of this, right, I would register report, right, I would say default name, year to date, month sales, blah, 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 right. I would go find my summary S8 RPT RPT underscore S8 underscore item summary, this guy right here, right? So see, I have not generated more than one actual report file, okay, but I've created two instances of it point at the same thing, so that if you have to edit something on the report itself, okay, it's going to affect both copies, okay, or both instances. They're not actual copies. Okay, so hopefully that answered, enough or maybe more than you wanted to know about registering a report and with two different filters. Okay. Okay. So summary section, right? There's a lot in there, right? One data element. Okay. And another thing that I usually point out to people is if I'm looking at sales, right, and if the title has the word item in it, that's an item level report. If it doesn't have the word item in it, it's some kind of summary, right? So store summary, 1 line per store, right? Style summary, 1 line per style. Vendor bestseller, right? 1 line per vendor. So those are summary level reports. So if it doesn't have the word item in it, doesn't have the word style in it, you're not getting item or style level detail. Department summary, 1 line per DCS, basically. Okay, and that's for the Retail Pro stock reports. Okay, like if you get up into our reports, we try to follow the same convention, but in some cases we don't. If you rename them, you can rename them any way you want, whatever that means. Okay, all right. So I want to give you a little bit of a tour of the merchandise area. Right, so summary area, one data element, the last section that Retail Pro passes out with their version 9 is in merchandise. Okay, and merchandise reports can be more than one data area, like on hand and sales. You can see a couple of things on here, right, that are on hand and sales. There's these things up here they call DT reports. Those are multiple data type. That's what DT means. Okay, those come with the system. The other flavor of merchandise reports is more than one date range. Okay, so you can see these, you know, sales by department, sales by item, sales by style for 2 different date ranges. These all come with the system. If it says item in the title, it's an item level report. If it says style in the title, it's a style level report. If it says department, all you're going to get is department summary. This year versus last year is what this is designed to do. Okay. The ones that come out of the box, they're going to have a preset filter in them that's going to do last 7 days, this year versus last year. When you run them, okay, you can change that, right? So the date ranges are like all the way down at the bottom here. They hide them pretty good. Okay, so just because this says last 7 days this year doesn't mean that you couldn't say, oh, this year I want to see year to date. Okay, and then last year I want to see last year to date, right? So down here, last year to date, right? So when I execute this, it's going to execute it for this run only, right? It's not going to change the default filter, right? So I'm not even sure if I've got, you know, data in that's going to populate anything in this, but I just want to show you what this report looks like, right? Again, big on the graphs, right? And the way this one is set up, we've got everything for, well, no, they're doing it this year quantity, this year price, last year quantity, last year price, this year margin, last year margin. It's a little weird, but you know, if you liked this report and you wanted to rearrange the way these columns are, then that's something you would have to do in Crystal Reports. Okay, so running the existing reports, re-registering them, and changing the default filters, those are all things that you can do yourself, okay, with the tools that are provided with Retail Pro. Okay. The other thing that you can do is if you're multi-store, you can take your reports that you create, right? So this sales item summary, let's say we had remote stores, right, multiple stores, and we wanted them to be able to run their own month-to-date sales item summary, right? So we can set this up. It's already defaulting, okay, to the right date range, right, in the default filter. So if I click this export button, okay, it asks you the question, do you want to export the report with the existing default filter values? Almost always that's going to be yes. There's certain circumstances where you can say no, or you might want to say no. But in general, if you're going to export these reports, you can, and you want them going out to the store, you export them with the existing default values, because this is a month-to-date report, and that it knows that because that's in the filter. Okay, now that creates a file, okay, that goes on a list, okay, that can be polled. Okay, so you don't have to manually take the files and send them out to your remote. There's a space, and I'll briefly show you where it is in the ECM, Enterprise Communication Manager. This is where your polling list is contained. Right, so I'm going to click on stations really quick, and you know, we're not really intending this to be ECM class, okay? But I just want to show you briefly in the list of stuff that gets polled here in Profile Checklist, in Documents. There's a spot right here for exported reports. Okay, so Generally, we would tell the system, if I told the system to export a report, go ahead and send it out to my remote. It doesn't automatically import, okay, but it'll go out there, right? So if you say export a report and this button is checked, that gets sent out to the remote and sits there waiting for somebody to import it. Okay, so that is, kind of like a two-step process, but it can be very, very handy for if any of you who are dealing with multiple stores know, getting things out over the polling cycle can be very convenient, even if you have to get on their system and install them. Okay, so exporting puts it on the list, okay, for sending out to the store, and then in the store, okay, they would import that file, okay, or there's a batch file, shell scripts, things like that, where we can either run those manually or automated to automatically import the reports out at remotes. So, if you're getting that far into things, talk to a tech or a trainer here, and we can give you the ins and outs on how to do this in a remote store or a multi-store environment. Okay. The one thing that we didn't talk about yet as far as all these reports go is the permission level of the reports. Okay, so if I look at this report that we just created, okay, it automatically got sysadmin access level, okay, which is the default, okay, but there might be reports in here that you don't want just everybody to see, okay, and the access level is the way to control that. Hang on a second, I got a question. See if I can question, or maybe it was answered. Let's see. Yeah. All right, so hopefully I answered whatever question was coming up there. If you didn't get your question answered, just pop it up again there. Okay, all right. All right, that might have been an old question that I already answered. Sorry about that. If it wasn't, pop a question up again and I'll try to grab it. Okay, so permissions, right? So there are things on here like you might not want everybody to know what your margins are, and a lot of these reports got margin on them, right? So if you're building a set to put out in the reports or put out on remotes in particular, or you have people, warehouse people, lower level employees, anything like that, that need to have some of these reports, but not all, okay? The way to control that access, okay, is to change your access level, right? So if I click the edit button here, that gives me this pull down, okay, and I can pick any level 1 through 4, okay, and to assign to this, and then these access levels are part of the group permissions, okay, in RPro proper, right? So everybody who has a login either is checked as a sysadmin or they belong to a user group, okay? And in the user group under reports, which I can't show you because my system isn't licensed, it will allow you to give certain people permissions. And let me do one thing here. I can start another RPro in the background. Let me see here. Yeah, let's start this in the background, and maybe we can get onto it in a second. Right, so bear with me for just a second because this is kind of important in my whole scheme of things. So I do want to show it to you. Okay, RPro. Almost there. Almost there. too many plugins, obviously. Actually, nope, can't do it. There we go. Okay, we'll let that load and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so you changed this access level here. That now becomes part of this report, right? So if you need to broadcast that out to the store, if you do another export, then you've got the default filters, the access level as part of that, and the path name and the name and all that stuff. So it's all part of the same export. If you're doing this just for central people, all you do is change the access level, make sure they actually have access to it, and then you're off to the races. All right, so let me just go in here and show you briefly where that report group permission bunch is, right? So if I pick one of these, okay, come on now, there we go. Okay, and so I'm in user groups, right? I'm in the permissions tab of the user groups. There's a reports section here. So if I open up the reports section, okay, now I'm looking at, let me widen that out just a little bit. Okay, so here's the access levels that I was talking about, right? So if you have store managers and all you want them to see is the access level 2 reports, then you uncheck sysadmin. So now instantly they do not have access to anything that has sysadmin level. Okay, and these are tiered, right? And generally people might use like maybe 1 or 2 of these, right? But if they need access to level 2 and to level 3, check both of them off. Okay, and you can also see that we can allow or deny the individual menu options, right? So if you want them to only see summary reports, leave that checked. If you don't want them in merchandise report, uncheck that. So regardless of what their access level is, they're not going to see that section of reports. Okay, and if you're putting things in the other directory or the custom directory, that's this one, access other reports. So both the custom and the other go in here. Everything else is, this is Retail Pro Standard, Retail Pro Standard, Retail Pro Standard, Retail Pro Standard. And then down here, you also see there's some things that you can turn on or off, right? If you never want these people to be able to see cost, even if it's on the report, cost or margin, right? Then you uncheck that, right? So they can run all the sales reports they want. They're never going to see what it cost you or how much margin you're making. Okay, and the other things, you know, if you want them to be able to register and unregister, if you want them to be able to print, things like that are controllable by permission. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of this and go back to where I've got my reports. Okay, so we talked about permissions. We talked about the different kinds of reports and why they're different sections. I showed you registering, why you would want to do that, register another copy of the report. Okay, and so now what we start looking at is what else is there. Okay, and what else is there is the stuff that you see under custom. Okay, and so if I open up custom, you can see on this computer I've got a bunch of stuff up here that we've been doing for specific clients for whatever reason. The stuff without the exclamation, right, where it says BHD in the front of it, this is all what we call our core custom reports. So when we sell a system, these are reports that we have accumulated over time. We've modified them for because a lot of people ask for the same thing, right? Or in some cases, we have paid a custom programmer to build what we call a custom package because there was a need that wasn't being met and we needed to have it met. Okay, so and all of this comes with the system. Now, some of you have been around long enough to know that in some cases you have asked your trainer to create a custom report for you, and a lot of times that custom report might end up here on the list because you had such a great idea that we want to share it with everybody. Okay, so everybody benefits from this collaboration of our clients, okay, and us, so that everybody gets some analysis tools that come from our relationship with our clients. Okay, it's not just us sitting in a vacuum going, oh, this would be a cool report. Most of the time, the ideas for these reports come from out of training or from a customer. So somebody's asking the question. So sorry. So Dee's asking, in the filter parameters, when you showed it in ABC order, then set it up on the reports, they see pretty random. Yes, can they be sorted to alpha or our own sort preference? Okay, so the answer to that question lies in how they're organized in the Crystal report. Okay, so that's going to be the next thing that we look at. Okay, because these reports in the BHD, in the BHD section, were created by us using Crystal Reports Writer. Okay, so the changes that I'm about to show you can only be done if you have Crystal Reports Writer. Okay, and changing the order of the parameters is one thing that you can change in Crystal Reports Writer. So when you're registering the report, you can rename the parameter, but you're right. The rest of it looks pretty random, quote unquote. Okay, so and I always use this example when I'm training people. Right, the item summary that we did earlier, right? This item summary, the one that we made the clone of, right? If I run this report, oh, well, I guess I have to run it year to date to get some stuff. 1 second. So I'm going to do year to date down here. Okay, year to date. Okay, so this report, one of the first things that started happening when we started passing these reports out is, yeah, this is great. Can I have description 2 on it? Because description 1 doesn't tell me my whole story. What we did was we took this report, okay, added description 2 in it, and did a few other things to it. So what I want to do is I want to export this to a PDF and hold on to it down over here in the corner. Okay, and I'm going to show you what our changes were and show you how we did it. Come on, Mr. PDF. I really don't see how that's working. PDF. Okay. All right, something wrong with my PDFer here. That may come up in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Crystal Reports. Right? Oh, I got 3 instances of Crystal Reports up here. Let me close a couple of those. That's maybe what part of my memory problem is here. Okay, close. All right. So I'm going. This is Crystal, right? So let me minimize this and show you how I got there. Okay. So Crystal Reports Writer is a third-party industry standard tool that's used to write reports for varieties of databases. The Oracle database is a RPro flavor of a standard database, and the fields are accessible from other programs. Right, it's an industry standard. There are other SQL tools that you can use to access the RPro database. Crystal just happens to be, been around a long time. There are people that are familiar with it. The reports that you see that RPro passes out were written in Crystal, so it just makes sense, right, to use Crystal Reports if you're going to piggyback on top of this. But there are other products that will do this, right? So a Crystal Reports, right, is a program that you launch. Once you launch it, that it comes up with something like this. I already got a couple reports preloaded in here. I'm just going to close those out, okay, so that we can start with go find a report that I'm going to alter. Okay, so in the case of the item summary, we created an item summary with description 2, right? So up here in custom, okay, under BHD sales, we followed the same convention where if it has the word item in it, you're going to get item level reporting. If it doesn't have the word item level in it, you might not. Okay, so item bestsellers, item sold below cost, item summary with description 2, those are all item level reports. These ones up here that say department store, department, those are not going to give you items. They're going to give you a department or DCS level summary. Okay, so item summary with description 2, if I run that thing, okay, for year to date, okay, I'll show you what the difference is. If you can remember the last one, because my PDFer doesn't look like it's doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, so this report first, you'll notice there's a lot more, there's some subtotals in it, there's some different stuff, okay, than what you see, and we'll talk about that. But I have description 1 and description 2 in addition to attribute size, price and cost, margin, et cetera, et cetera. So most of everything else about this report, except for the description 2, from the item level line, right, was the same. Okay, so in Crystal, okay, what we did, let me open let's see, our RPro reports in the custom. Okay, and this one is the S8. Okay, S2, S8. So that happens to be this one right here. So the BHD S8. So it's a clone of the Retail Pro S8 report item summary, and I've got D2 right in there. So if you look at our RPTs, we try to leave notes to ourselves as to where we what the source was of this, and then we renamed it and customized it so that we're not affecting the actual report that came with the system. Okay. In any case, okay. So this is Crystal Reports, right? So you've got like headers at the top of here. If you've never used this kind of tool, this might look kind of like a maze, right, or a little intimidating. It's not really. We do offer, introductory training. Is what we refer to it as in Crystal. If you've used Crystal before, it just takes just a little bit of knowledge to know how to use it with Retail Pro. One important factor is almost never do we build a report from scratch. Almost always do we take something that already exists, copy it, and modify it, okay? Because there's a lot of work that goes into building a report from scratch that's just not necessary. Okay? So most of the time we will take something, copy it, and change it to the way we want. In this case, okay, and then I will open up my existing one, right? So reports, summary. Okay, so the S8 report, which is the one that this one was copied from. S8 item summary. So that's the report that we've been playing with, right? If I open this up and you look at it, you can see basically we've got, same structure, right? This is the important part down here, the details, okay, that show you, I've got, description 1, and basically what we did with this report is we took the UPC out, scooted everything over, and put description 2 in, right? So if I flip back over to my copy, right, you can see the UPC is gone, right, and in its place, we put a description 2, right? So that's a relatively simple thing to do, right? In the body of the report, you can see several bands, right? So I've got a details section, right, that right now it's got the hash mark lines through it. that means that it's hidden, because what I really want in this report is I want a line that has all my stores added up together. All right, so this report by itself has a tendency to report stores separately. So I wanted a company level report, and that's why you see what you see here. Okay. Anyway, taking a field off, right, is as easy as highlighting it and hitting delete. Right. In some cases, the header, as you can see, disappeared here. In some cases, the header is attached to the actual field. This is what we call a summary. Right. So this is a summary of the line. Or no, not sorry. That's just another descriptor. I'll talk about summaries in a sec. So if I'm taking description 2 out of this and putting UPC back, right, here's the trick to this, right? So over on the Field Explorer pane, over here on the right, okay, if I open up database fields, okay, I've got a listing of all the fields that are available under this package, or actually procedure name, right? So if I click the plus here, these are all the fields that potentially could be added onto this, to the line items of this report. Okay, so you can see there's a bunch. In this particular report, they use like maybe 10% out of the ones that could be available on here. So you could take the DCS code off, right, and you could put the department name, the class name, and the subclass name. Okay, you could add description 3 and 4 if that's what you need. You can add dates, so first received date, last received date type of stuff. So there's all kinds of things on here that might be useful for you on a report. Okay, and then if it does not exist on this list, okay, then that's another step deeper into developing reports, because someone would have to create a special package for you, and that's what our custom people, or we, in some cases, we do. Export option is broken in build 157. Okay, so this is Lisa from Worldwide Golf. Copy from an earlier version. Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks, Lisa. So, every time you do this, we have upgraded this to the latest and the greatest from RPro, and there's a little feature, the export feature is actually broken in this. Okay, so now I know. All right. So if you are, moving things around, right, you can make, typical where shift and arrow open, right? So that makes the reports size, right? You can control shift moves the files over. So this is all typical of a Windows tool, graphics manipulation tools and things like this. Some of the same ways to move things around are similar to Page Designer in RPro if you know how to use that. And like I said, even if you're not totally familiar with the way things are, a little bit of instruction can go a long way in here, because basically all you're doing is taking something that is here, dragging it. So I'm going to put description 3 on here instead of description 2, right? So I can put description 3 in here, okay, size it down with my shift or yanking with my arrows. You can see here that the default font is bigger than the one that I'm dealing with in my report. So I can take my font attributes from one field, right? So I'm going to right click here on my description 1. That pops up a little menu of what I can do with my right clicker. Okay. My favorite thing about this is Format Painter, right? So if I want to take the format and the everything about this field and copy it to my description 3, I click on description 1, I get Format Painter, that gives me this little paintbrushy dude, and I just left click and drop it right on top of that. Now instantly I have all the same font attributes, field attributes, and everything on that field. Okay, so that can be handy for a lot of things. It's just a little trick that we teach people when they're first learning. It saves a lot of time Okay, so anyway, if you are replacing a field, resizing things, moving them around on the detail line, okay, that's a pretty simple thing to do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a save as is this because I don't want to blow up my my D2. I'm going to say this is D3. Okay, so just so I keep it separate from my my stock report that runs from the menu. Okay, so showing a little bit about how you replace a field. Okay, the other lines that you see on here, so the detail line is where the data actually, where you actually put the data field, and then you summarize it down to the rest of these fields. Okay, if it's something that you need added up, right? So quantity, price, cost, margin to a certain extent, right? Those things are added up and displayed at different levels, right? So this report happens to have the ALU level, which means add everything up no matter what store it is and report it as one line per company. Group footer number 3 is a DCS code summary. Okay, so sort everything by DCS code. So the light gray bar is the DCS code total. The darker gray bar is the department total. Okay, and then I got a subsidiary, which most of you don't use, and a grand total. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and look at this report. So now these bar things should make sense to you, right? Let me get on a page where there's more going on. So it'd be a little more obvious, right? So we have these items, right? And then a total. This is the DCS, men's APP-SHT, right? So I have a total of this DCS. This total happens to be at the bottom. You can put the totals at the top, the totals at the bottom. You can see they're bolded here. So this men's APP-SHT, men's apparel shirt, 73 sold, extended price, extended cost margin, margin percent, which is the the total of that DCS, right? And so items, DCS total, okay, and then down here, okay, so there's my that darker gray there. That's the total of my men's department. Okay, so in the report that we ran, that was the RPro native, there were none of these subtotals in the report, I think. Let me just look, so I don't lie to you. Yeah, so no subtotals, right? So I've got the subsidiary total, right, and I have a grand total, and that's it. So it's not divided up, nor is it organized, okay, in a reasonably coherent fashion, okay, which is why we build these reports, because most of the time people think of their item summary reports either in I want to see everything for a vendor together, or I want to see everything in, I want to see all my departments together, one or the other. Okay, and I can't remember what order this one is actually in. Just look here, record sort. Okay, so it is in item SID order. Very convenient, right? So an item SID is that hidden value, that is the actual unique identifier in the system, and it's a long gobbledygook number. It has some logic to it, but no logic that a human really needs to remember. So having something in item SID order, it basically does you no good for a sort. So one of the things that we did when we did this report was put it in a specific order. Okay, so if I look at the same area in my crystal reports, so up here under report, I've got some things here that say record sort. So unless I tell it differently, sort the records in this order, right? And so I put in several in here so that it's item SID within the DCS. Okay, I could change that so that it would be, actually it is ALU because I have an ALU summary. But these other levels that you see, those are coming from the fact that I have groups or subtotals set up in the report, right? So if I look back over here on group sort, just group expert, sorry. So these are my groups, okay, and this forces a sort in the report. Okay, and those don't have to be visible in order to force the sort. Okay, I could take and hide the DCS total. Okay, and it would not print, but that sort order would still be there. So if I ran this report, I would have item, 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 item in DCS order with no DCS subtotals, and then I have a total by department. Okay, if I hid this level, so I right click on this and click hide. Okay, so now I would have things in DCS and by native department order, but no subtotals. It'd just be item, 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 grand total. Okay, let's hide this thing too. Okay, hide. Okay, so the subtotals or the groups do two things: allow you to be able to subtotal things and give you an automated sort. Okay. All right. So now, so the one question about the parameter order. Okay, so the parameter order is in here. Okay, in the in Crystal reports, right? So this is the order, unless things are changed around, that this is a list of parameters. I right-click here on parameter fields and set parameter order. This is the order roughly that they're displayed in. Okay, so you can move these around. Like so, if I wanted the long date, to be way down here, or just not, not available at all, I could demote it down to the bottom. Okay, and so you have some limited ability to control the order, or put things like put the sales date always at the top, that type of thing. And this is how you would do it permanently. The one thing, if you're in here, you have these filter criteria fields. So if you're tinkering with the parameter order, you always want to make sure that the filter criteria header and footer are the last things in here. Okay, if they're not, okay, then the potential exists for the filter to cut off wherever the filter criteria header and footer are. Okay, so that's an important thing to note if you're doing reports in Crystal, and especially if you're tinkering with the parameter fields, and always check your parameter order and make sure that the filter criteria are at the bottom. Okay. Now, in Crystal, you can add formulas, right? We don't really get into that too much in this because there's a lot of different ways that you can do these things. There's a lot of tricks about using formulas. That doesn't just have to be math. You can use them for record selection. You can use them for a lot of different things, right? And if you're interested in learning about some of those things, we can help you with that. But there's a lot of power in Crystal reports, and those of us who use it continually discover new stuff that we didn't know was possible, especially if we work with people who know more than we do, and there's plenty of those people. And so the last thing that I really wanted to talk about maybe before we leave Crystal is what can you do if the field that you want doesn't exist on here, right? So and just for instance here, if something like this is all sales, so next discount. I mean, I'll just pick something random, right? Case quantity or units per case, right? If you needed to know on the selling report what your units per case are, it's not in the typically in the item summary, okay, package. Okay, so these what we call procedures here, these come out of a package that was given to us with Retail Pro. I'm going to open up the area where you can see them, just for illustration purposes. So I have this report. I'm going up here to database. I'm going to set data source location right here. Okay, and then this opens up this window. This is the procedure, okay, that's currently attached to this report. Okay, and if I click on the plus, okay, on the properties, and I open this all the way up, you can see this is the package that it's actually attached to. So the package has multiple procedures in it. Okay, so down in the bottom half, okay, if I open up my RPro ODS, that's my database, and I've got numerous ones in here because I've got a lot of junk in here. You will not have this many. Okay, but what we're doing here is we're logging into the actual database, okay, and looking at the procedures that are available on that package. You're not going to change anything in here, but you could repoint this report at a different package if you wanted to. Okay, so in the RPro ODS section under report user, this is where everything that you would probably work on would be. Okay, and so you can see here up in the top it says report summary _9_3_287. Okay, so what that is that's a copy of a report package from the 9.3 versions of RetailPro. Okay, and so what we do is we generally make copies. In some cases, we modify them slightly. And so if I go down to this package, so here it is right here, and I click on the plus to open it up, you can see now that I should find this SP_8 item sum, right? It'll be on this list. Okay, so this package contains the data file or data fields that I use for this report, right? So here's the item summary. Right now, I don't get any farther than this. Basically, this is just telling me what package this thing is in. Okay, and if I have an SQL editor, I can open up this package, report summary _9_3_287. Okay, and I can go see if I can add the field to this procedure. Okay, and I don't want to give you the impression that that is something that is as simple as I just explained. Okay, but that's what you're in for when you're talking about I can't find the field I want. What do I need to do? Okay, so those of you who've dealt with version 9 reports and have dabbled in Crystal know about this issue, right? That if it's not there, then I got to find somebody that knows how to modify my package so that I can get it in Crystal. Okay, and so for this webinar, that's basically where we say here's the line, right? With Crystal, you can do this, this, and this. If you need to do any more like adding fields to this, then you need an SQL editor and the knowledge to be able to use it. Okay, and we do things like this for people. We do have SQL editors, and we can make minor changes. Sometimes things are more complicated than that, and we farm it out. We have a custom programmer that does those kind of things, and so the answer is rarely ever that's not possible. It's just find the person who knows and figure out what it's going to cost you if it comes to that. Okay, so the only other thing that we talk about during this webinar, okay, and this is just like a really quick kind of here's what you do if type of thing, is about automating reports. So we in the early part of this we built this report, okay, month to date sales item summary. Okay, and if I wanted to make a little batch file where somebody just has to push the button, okay, and run that report, I have my filters already pre-set up, okay, and I have some pre-made batch files that we use when we talk about this. Let me dig them up here. Hang on one sec. My pre-made batch files are on here. V9 reports. not. Okay, so let's see. Let's see if there's anything in here. Okay, don't have anything here. All right, let me see if I can find one really quick here. All right, let's see if I saved my batch files here. Probably not. Okay. All right, I should be able to do this up here. B9 report. No. How about this? Hey, here's some batch files. Okay, so these are some pre-built batch files. We can let you have these so that all you have to do is modify them. Okay, but essentially what they are, okay, is a job string, right? This first line kills the reports if they're being run, because what we can't do is we can't execute the reports more than once on a single computer, right? So that kills the report, okay? And so this says run Retail Pro reports, okay? Log in using this username and this password. So we have to have a username and password embedded in this batch file that has permission to run that specific report. So if you're dealing with things that have a 1, 2, or 3 access level, whatever username you embed in here has to have access to that. Okay, this where it has RPT here, that's where most of the magic happens, right? So if I take this report, okay, I've got this name, okay, and this is how it knows what report to run. Okay, so if I go in here and replace this with what's between my or on my list, right now it's going to run this report, needs to know what directory it's in. In this case, it's not in the other directory, it's in the summary directory. Okay, and it's going to automatically PDF it. Okay, and it's going to deposit it in a directory called RV9 reports. All right, so let's see. So back here, I'm going to stick this into my Retail Pro 9 directory, right? Local, save. Okay, so now what I should be able to do, okay, is run this report. It's going to kill my reports instance that I've got going here, okay, because it can't run simultaneously. Okay, so let's see, go back up here, Retail Pro 9. Okay, so V9 daily reports. Okay, so what I can do is send this to the desktop as a shortcut. Right, so here it is right here. So if you have a string of reports that you want your salespeople to run at night after they close the store, right? You can set them all up so that all they have to do is that. Okay, it'll kill reports if it's been running. It'll run the report. Okay, so I don't have the right password in it, but so let's just do this real quick. So come on, baby. No, that's not it. Okay, so so let's edit that real quick so it'll actually run. Okay, so okay, and if you're running a lot of reports, that's probably not going to be cap sensitive, and we recommend that you would make a user, okay, that just runs reports and doesn't have rights to do anything else, just in case anybody looks inside this ADMIN. Just in case anybody looks inside your batch file, and just not having fun anymore. Okay, so let's see. So password, type in no copy. All right, so this, there we go. All right, so that should do it, I think. Sysadmin, sysadmin. Okay. Okay, so now if I run it, it should actually work. Right, so it's I'm gonna this one as the month to date, and it doesn't have any records. Still gonna build a file, okay? Because what I told it was go put this in the V9 reports directory, right? So if you're running this, you can shortcut that out to the desktop so that they can pick up the report if they want. So this is the shortcut to the reports. Here is the one that we just ran. Okay, so that's the report we ran, but we don't have any sales month to date, so that's why it's blank. Okay, but this is step 1 in automating reports. Okay, and then if all you need is for them to be internal, right, and just make sure they run it, they can do it off of a shortcut like this, or you can put that batch in the task scheduler so that it automatically runs. Okay, and then we also at Big Hairy Dog have some auto email scripts, which I don't actually have on this computer, but we can set up an instruction that says automatically email at a certain time anything that's in that V9 directory to 1 or more people. Okay, so a lot of people are starting to take advantage of that because they have their on-hand reports at the end of the month that everybody forgets to run at a specific time. So we can set that up so that it runs at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of the month and emails it to you so you know that it happened. Okay, and reports can be generated in either PDF or Excel. You can see there's a couple of Excel ones here. So either one of those formats is generally what people will do. Some people like the Excel for whatever, because they're going to take that data and they're going to put it in something else, or some of them just want the PDF, and either of those are doable with grouping reports or making those automatic on a one button. All right, that's pretty much what we do on our reports. So if there's any questions that haven't been addressed, you can give you a couple of minutes to make maybe voice a question. All of you who attended this will get a link back to the recorded webinar. So if you want to review it, you can. It'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. You get to the Big Hairy Dog site, and there's a link to videos. This will be on there along with a lot of other webinars. We do webinars at least a couple times a month on various subjects. This is one of our most popular, and I would encourage you to check out other trainers because they give you different insight. So I know Jeff Kenshall has done a V9 reports recently, and our other trainer who does the V9 reports is Tanya. And so everybody brings to the table a little bit of a different perspective and covers different things or gets different questions. How do you find, a question from Stephanie, how do you find what your user-defined fields are? Okay, and so that's a question that we have to look in Retail Pro for. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go back to here. Okay, so your user-defined fields are labeled, okay, in System Preferences. So if you would go into Options and System Preferences here, okay, and your local preferences has all of the UDFs, and so UDFs are merchandise or customers or vendors or employees. Those are the 4 places where you can have user-defined fields. Most people are in merchandise, right? So you go to merchandise and then user-defined auxiliary, right? And so here's the field names right here, right? So if I sort on field number, I'm just going to left click on the field number. These are the labels that are assigned to my various UDFs, right? You don't have to have a label to use it. So somebody, see, like this one has got the labels blank, so that's going to show up as UDF4, right, on a report, or if you're adding the field or whatever, okay? But these are the values that will print there, okay? And so in Crystal reports, we can't pull these labels. So this, where it says fee right here, there isn't any way in Crystal where I can say, hey, UDF3 is fee, so put the fee here. You have to know that you want UDF3 to go in the space, okay, on the report. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Okay, anybody else? There's another one. Okay, that channel for the YouTube, I believe that's correct. That might be a specific webinar that you've linked to. But if you go to our website and you click on videos, that gets you into where all our YouTube stuff is. Okay, so this one will be posted probably by tomorrow, and you can check it out. And like I said, there's all kinds of other cool stuff in there, maybe more cool stuff than you have the ability to digest. If you don't get all your questions answered, or if you want to pursue this further, we're always available here. Book a hour with the trainer, or something that. Okay, said not to get rid of parameters in the filter list. Why not get rid of subsidiary since we don't use it? Okay, so if you're talking about subsidiary in the actual Crystal report, or talking about subsidiary in the filters, subsidiary is a base part of Retail Pro's data. So there's a lot of places where subsidiary is part of the record, even though you don't know it, know what it is. Like for instance, store, right? Each store record has a subsidiary attached to it. Okay, so some of these things they're so based into the SQL, to try to get rid of them, as far as like taking them out of the filter parameters or stuff like that, can cause problems. Okay, so if you want to, if you want to demote them, right, put them at the bottom of the list. Like if you don't want to see this all the time, right, put it all the way at the bottom. Okay, but don't put it below the filter criteria. Okay. So that's really the way to hide it from yourself. Okay, let's see what we got. Filter parameters, not Crystal. Okay, so you're talking about when you register a report. So if I go back to register a report, here we go. Okay, let me log back in. Okay, so let me see if I'm getting this right. Right. So if I have this report, okay, as here, and go to filters in here and change the name, filter criteria. Okay, so subsidiary is here. Okay, so if you want to demote this, then what you need to do is change the title of that so that it sorts alphabetically into the bottom of the list. I think that will work. It doesn't always work. when I've had the desire to do that. In general, you can move some of those things around by changing the label, but not all of them. Okay, I don't know if that really answers your question, Dee, but if you want to talk about it further, we can do that on a one-on-one. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, so I got to run. Got somebody right behind you guys, so thanks for your attention. And like I said, we will get this on the